Welcome back. You watch Morning Live. Thank you for staying with us. Now, last week, Morning Live presenter, our very own Lebo, sat down with South African-born but now UK-based author Richard Manson in Rosebank to talk about his new novel titled Who Killed Piet Barol. Manson is back in the country to launch this long-awaited sequel to his last novel, The History of the Pleasure Seeker. Let's take a look at how it went down.
Richard, welcome to Morning Live.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I grew up in Johannesburg.
Yeah.
It's brilliant to be back.
Has it changed since then?
It has changed a lot. You get a sense that there is a lot of money in this city. Everyone's building these brand new houses. I saw a set of yew trees in the shape of dollar signs outside someone's mansion. It's a bit crazy, but it's also great to meet you. I've really enjoyed our chat.
Talk to us about Who Killed Piet Barol. Somebody who may not have heard about this read. Give us a brief synopsis.
So it starts with Piet Barol. He's Dutch. It's Cape Town, 1914. And he's pretending to be a French aristocrat. Right. But he's down on his luck. He needs some money. He's a furniture maker. And it's a book about very different South Africans and the way that they see the world and their relationships. So Piet makes friends with Nsina. He just recently got out of the mines. He's the grandson of the witch doctor of Guadana. And he was raised in the old ways. And he tells Piet that he knows of a brilliant tree, an incredible tree. And Piet thinks, I can get this tree for free.
Yeah.
But he can't speak to Nsina because he doesn't speak Xhosa.
Yeah.
So they hire Luvo, who is also Xhosa, but raised by German missionaries. So he speaks perfect English. He's a devout Christian. So you have Piet, who doesn't really believe in anything, very charismatic, risk-taking adventurer, going off to the forest of Guadana with a Christian Xhosa and a Xhosa raised in the old ways.
Right.
And it's about their relationship and the many things that happen as a result of it.
Why was it important for you to capture this period in the South African history? This tumultuous period in South Africa, for you to have a true reflection of that period in the book?
Yeah, well, I just think it's a fascinating moment in the history of our country. And a lot of people don't think that much about the Natives Land Act and what it unleashed. And part of it is still on the statute books to this day. It's why people in tribal areas can't sell their own land. But their land is their only asset. So, I mean, it has its consequences. But I was very interested in it and in telling that story. And, the way that this book started, do you know the forest of Guadana? Have you heard of it?
I've never been.
So every Xhosa knows of it.
Yeah.
And it's this forest that no one enters in the Eastern Cape. This is all real. And I thought, I want to go visit this forest that no one enters. Why don't they enter it? And I asked permission of the chief of the village of Guadana if I could spend the night in the forest. And he said, okay. But you could see he thought it was a kind of weird thing to do. And I was with two Xhosa friends of mine, Nelly Tom and Onwaba and Kai. And the reason that no one enters is that because many Xhosas believe that a monster lives in this forest whose glance turns you to stone. And I met this 100-year-old man, Mr. Mbiko. And I said, Mr. Mbiko, if this monster is there, how do you know? And he said, when I was a boy, i.e. in the 1920s, the white men came and they built structures in this forest and they told me of the monster.
The forest. What does it feel like being in this forest? Is there a power greater than yourself when you walk into this forest?
That is such an interesting question. I mean, when I went to Guadana for the first time, the witch doctor of Guadana village came with me. And as I walked into the trees, she said to me, this is not an evil place, it's a powerful place.
Right.
And I stepped into the trees, and honestly, it was like suddenly the modern world just disappeared. This is ancient, ancient forest. And I had recently had a real personal tragedy in my own family. And something about being in this place, she was right. It is a very powerful place. All these feelings rose through me. And actually spending time there, I had a sense of what I should do about my own problem. And, we need to protect these wild spaces.
Yeah.
And so in the book, The Forest of Guadana, which is obviously huge in the book, even though now it's very small in real life, but it's a character in its own right.
Yeah.
You see the leopards and the spiders and the trees, these ancient trees. And so, it is a very powerful place.
Let's talk about these three different worlds. There's a world of witchcraft, Christianity, and ancestry. How do these worlds merge? And what do they have in common, and how do they make it work?
Well, I think what happens is that these people get to know each other. And once they're deep in the forest in quest for this tree, the world outside kind of disappears, and you just got human beings and their conflicts and their closeness. But of course, the world outside intrudes because, as you know, in 1913, just the year before the book starts, we had the Natives Land Act, where the white government abolished property rights for 14/15 of the black inhabitants of the country. So in the middle of winter, you get turfed off your land. You either have to give all your animals to the white farmer and take a huge reduction in your income, or you just have to leave. I mean, just such brutality.
Yeah.
And this has happened to Luvo's parents. They've been thrown off their land. His sister's baby has died, and he's incredibly wounded, but he can't share it. But in Tsina's ancestors, because they live beyond the Great Forest in the Eastern Cape, they haven't been so affected. And they actually, you know, the whole slaughter of the cattle, right?
Yes.
And Tsina's great-great-grandfather decided not to slaughter his cattle. And they went to the other side of the Great Forest and founded the village of Guadana. And so they are still rich. They still have their cattle. They still live in the old ways.
Yeah.
And Piet, of course, is European, but he doesn't have any money and he wants some. So there are all these different, everyone's got their own agendas.
Yeah. Let's talk about the history of a pleasure seeker, which is the sequel. You know, this one is a sequel to that. When you were writing that, at what point did you say, okay, maybe it can be a sequel? Or
well, I mean, I'm making this sort of galaxy of books that fit together in any order. Starts with The Lighted Rooms, then History of a Pleasure Seeker, now Who Killed Piet Barol. And you could read Who Killed Piet Barol and then History of a Pleasure Seeker. They can go in any order. So it's not a series in that way. But Piet came into my mind. He's this charismatic, handsome, risk-taking adventurer. And of course, colonial South Africa was shaped by a lot of people like this who came from Europe. And so when Piet came to me, I knew how he would die. And it's not anything I think you can expect, right? Who killed Piet Barol? It's got a complicated answer to that question. But I knew how he would die, but I wanted to write History of a Pleasure Seeker when he's young and we like him. You know, he hasn't yet been corrupted.
Still clean.
And he's a bit of an adventurer. It's a very sexy book, History of a Pleasure Seeker, but I knew always that it would lead to this one.
Yeah.